Hello, here we are at A Course of Love, chapter 13 of the Dialogues. Long title for this chapter, Sharing and a Refinement of Your Means of Expressing What You Know. And that really is about the only thing that this chapter talks about. And I think because the reason why this chapter is here is because we're excited about what's happening and we want to find a way to share it. So this chapter is just addressing that particular issue. So it begins with the idea of, you can trust that what you're coming to know, even though you may be tempted to discount it. So in other words, we really aren't in the habit of accepting wisdom that comes from an inside source as being completely reliable because we haven't trusted ourselves. But he's starting out with the idea that, wait, you can trust this. That is happening to you and it's going to happen to you. Here's one of the joys of this path, and I'm sure you've already discovered it, that it doesn't quit. Right? You never get there because it's creation. It's always being created. It's always unfolding. It's always expanding. So you never arrive and now I'm done. It's an ongoing discovery and exploration. And that, the mind gets exhausted with that idea. The mind says, no, don't give me that because I need to conquer this. I need to come to a conclusion. I need to complete my goal. But that's not our true nature. Our true nature is that of continual discovery and creation. And this is coming from that place. So then he goes on to say that you might have trouble expressing it, as it is beyond mind and body and beyond form and time. So we've got two big ideas here, and these are paraphrased from what he said. So in other words, what's happening to you is real and you can trust it. What's more, it's never going to quit. You're on the road now, and even when you're in a place where you feel stuck or you feel like, oh, I've forgotten, I've lost it, I don't have it anymore, I'm depressed, if something situational happens and you just feel like you are not where you want to be in an inner state, you can trust that whatever is happening to you is part of your journey. It's part of the reveal, if you will. It's like your whole life is a setup. It's as if everything that's happening is set up to lead you home now. So you can trust it. You can trust your process. You can trust whatever's happening to you. What's more, if the place that you're in is a really challenging and icky place, you know from past experience that everything comes and goes. Nothing stays. So this is going to go too, and I'm going to find out what the gift is here, and then the next thing's going to happen. So anyway, that's the first idea. That's an important idea, that trust, that recognition that you are in a setup and it's benevolent and it's leading you home. That's huge. And then the second recognition is that we have always used our minds to explain things and to advance our belief systems and to help other people and help ourselves. And this expression is a little frustrating because it's beyond mind and body and beyond form and time. So how do you use a mind to explain something that the mind can't understand? So in that way, we need to have that recognition that it's difficult to express, but you can trust it. And he's going to go further to say, even though it's difficult, you still need to be expressing it. So let's go into that a little bit deeper. Verse 2. What you will be coming to know in this new way of discovery will be coming to you from the state of unity, from a state you share with all at the level of Christ consciousness, but that may literally not be shareable with those who remain in a separate state, except through the sharing of who you are and who you know others to be. So in other words, if they're not in that same vibrational level as you, you're going to have very limited ability to express this whole process, because it's not a belief system. And the mind knows all about belief systems, and it can take its whole life studying it and regurgitating memorized verses and study this chapter, that chapter, and become just very, very fluent in fundamentalism of any degree. But what's happening to you can't be applied to that. So in some ways, you're only going to be able to express it with people who are at the same or similar level as you. It doesn't mean they have to be learning a course of love. It just means to be that their setup has got them at the same or similar vibrational level as yours. So they'll understand you and you'll understand them when it comes to actually talking about life. So coming to know will feel like surprising discoveries, even though they've always been true. And they'll come to you as whole ideas, not in parts, because we're not learning something. If you go for a doctorate degree, a medical degree, you've got to learn it in parts. First you learn this, then you learn this, then you learn this. The stuff that's coming to you now is complete, like some knowing of, this is the way it is. So it's a different way. And it may seem complicated even though it's actually simple. And the reason for that is because you're stepping beyond your old patterns, and that feels new and challenging. So if you've been operating according to your conditioning up until this time, and now you're stepping beyond the conditioning, in other words, those things that have happened to you that have laid down the belief system tracks in your psyche, and now you're not listening to those anymore, at least not all the time, and you're getting whole pieces of stuff that can't even be expressed in words. That feels new, and it feels completely different. It's a different pattern, a different way of growth. So just knowing that that's true can help to understand what's happening to you. But your desire to share is needed. So that's interesting. You want to share this because it's exciting and it's wonderful and oh my gosh, it's actually true. But the reason why it's needed is so that you can understand it, not to impart knowledge to others. And my having been a teacher for many, many years, and I'm sure you've heard it before, the best way to learn something is to teach it. Because I think what happens when you share something, and I'm talking about verbally now, when you share something verbally, your whole system is involved in acceptance of it. You have to integrate it before you can share it adequately. It has to be your part of your psyche and your foundation in order for you to communicate about it. And as you communicate about it, the power of your tongue and your mouth and your intelligence and the heart behind your words all coming together to express gives you a firmer foundation in what is happening to you and helps you explore and understand it more. So that's the reason to communicate it. Not because you're going to be out there teaching and preaching and showing the way, but because you need it for your process. So let's take a look at how we're going to have these opportunities. Verse 6, once you've attained a state of being able to sustain Christ consciousness, this will no longer be a problem, because you will constantly abide in the awareness of the relationship of unity. But until this state is achieved, you will move in and out of states of awareness of the relationship of unity. So, in other words, what this is telling you is don't think that you've lost it if you don't have the joy and the ease of it all the time. You're in transition and you're moving into a constant state of unity, and it's just part of the process. Since you are living in the time of Christ, intermediaries are not needed. You aren't being asked to become an intermediary between the separated selves and the self of union. Thank goodness, because how would we know how to do that? Now, there are those who are following the way of Jesus, and as you get into the dialogues, that's going to be addressed directly, who are functioning as an intermediary between the separated selves and the self of union. But that's not the primary function of being here, and it's no one's primary function, and it's certainly not what you're being called to do. We don't need evangelists anymore. Now, verse 7, what you are called to do is to share in union with others whose awareness is expanding. So what happens when you establish relationships with people who are also on a path is that as you discuss it, you cement, crystallize, if you will, the things that are happening to you, and they do this, it does the same for them. And by sharing, there's a deeper understanding. It's the when two or three are gathered together syndrome. Your Christ consciousness is joining the consciousness of another, a reflection of yourself, and becoming stronger than 1 + 1, and is taking you into parts of discovery that you wouldn't have alone. And you can probably relate to this. I certainly can. If I never had any conversations with people about this, I wouldn't have had discoveries, reflections, and ideas come to me as much as they have. So there's a reason why you're feeling like you want to share, and it's because it's part of your journey that's going to help you really anchor this. So you're not alone in your expanding awareness of the time of Christ. Don't think you are. This is happening to a lot of people all over the world. Coming to know is a shared relationship. You do not come to the knowing state of unity alone. So all over the planet, there are other beings who are in the same stage that you are, and are kind of awakening together, because it's this divine impulse that's coming to maturity that's saying, okay, it's time to move into this now. And so you're maturing at the same level, and you can feel that. And if you're not working with a group, with a Course of Love group, you can still find people that you can talk to. I mean, there are people you can talk to online. There's the Course of Love Facebook group. There are Course in Miracles groups that you can join. There are churches. There are avenues, and they're growing all the time. So if you look, you do have access to others who are coming to know in that same space that you are. So what you come to know may literally not be shareable with those who exist in a separate state, except through sharing who you are and knowing who they are. This is a repeat from before, but it bears repeating at this time, because how does that work then with people who are still in a separated state? Well, again, you've probably experienced this. Energy is exchanged whenever two come together. There's like a magnetic impulse between people finding a place where you can meet. So as you walk in the world anchored in your unity, anchored in yourself, you are like a shining beacon, even if you don't even say a word. But as you're caught in separation and you're You know, if you're driving down the street and you're triggered by someone's driving and you're back in a separated state, not so much. But even if that happens, you can forgive yourself because it's all coming. You can trust it. It's coming. You don't have to do it. You're not doing anything. You're actually being done. But knowing that you have that gift to give, that when you're with others, as you look at them and see them as they truly are, and know that they're not a separated being at all, but they're another reflection of you at some different level of maturity. And you see them as God, you see them as the creator, not as, and as part of you, then the whole thing, they feel that, they recognize that because they are part of you and they are connected to you and they can sense what you're feeling and how you're seeing them. And in this way, that kind of sharing can happen without even a single word being exchanged. When you live according to what you know to be true, you'll naturally form relationships that will allow the truth to be shared. I think that was a repetition too. I guess they were worth it. It is the separated self who tries to serve as intermediary by evangelizing or convincing others. Relationship or union negates the need for an intermediary. Okay, that's an important concept to grasp. If you're the one who's tempted to go around and tell everybody that you've found something that works, realize what part of you wants to be the preacher. It's the separated self. And the separated self is trying to defend a belief system. Now, I will have to say that in the beginning, we take this information and it actually is a belief system at first. We are working with the mind to get the mind to come along for the ride up until a certain point. And when it becomes experiential, when it becomes something that you are actually living and experiencing and knowing, the mind can't go there. So if the mind is trying to turn it into a belief system and get everybody on over to your side to play dodgeball for your team, then you know who's in charge of that project. That's the ego. That's the mind. So the knowing part of you is aware of the fact that the separated self, the individuated being, is not in charge and has never been in charge. And that all is right in Oz. Things are unfolding and happening as they should be. And the mind and the personal will don't need to play a part in this at all. Now, on the other hand, if you are prompted from an inner impulse to share in some way, such as, look what I'm doing these PowerPoint reviews. There was an impulse that came from within to start doing these, and there's a whole history of it that I won't go into, but when that impulse says, do this, I do that. And so do a lot of other teachers. And if you are called to do some kind of a project like that, by all means, follow through. But it's not, we're not proselytizing here. We don't need to, because this is not, we're not winning an election. We're just coming into truth, and it has its own natural rhythm, and it's all being taken care of. Thank you very much. So we end this review then with chapter 12 as just a kind of a summary of what our role is in expressing what we're learning and in being in relationship. By being who you are and seeing others as who they truly are, you create the relationship in which sharing can occur. Without relationship, there is no willingness and no union. Without relationship, you exist as a separated self attempting to communicate union from the state of separation. This does not work. Join with your brother and sister in Christ, however, and sharing becomes effortless and joyful and effective. So what this is basically saying is when you see yourself as a separated being and you see somebody else as a separated being, there is no real relationship happening there. But as you become stronger and stronger and more accustomed to this space of recognizing that everything that is happening is actually happening within you, and that every one that you encounter is another beautiful color in the rainbow of the one, then you walk in the world like that, and struggle isn't a part of it. So thank you very much for joining me for this chapter. We only have a few chapters left in the dialogues, so I look forward to joining with you on chapter 14.